think I've had like 4 espressos this morning, just like
Oh.
I go like,
I can see why.
yeah. You'll start to realise that like basically I just can't do anything in halves, man.
Mate, you know when I think you messaged me on Instagram. We were talking about like you ate like a whole pack of biscuits. Mate, on the same, like my girlfriend sometimes looks at me like I'll get like a bar of chocolate out of the fridge that'll be like that big, and like she'll turn around and then she turns around 10 seconds later and the whole thing's gone, and I'm just like, I feel like fucking shit. Like, and she's like, you ate the whole thing. I'm like, mate, I just once I get a bit of dopamine going,
That's
that's
it.
it, you know.
Do you know what I think as well? Is like, so with drugs and alcohol, there was like a consequence that was big enough for you to not do it again. But with the sugar, it's like, ain't that bad. But you do wake up with a bit of a hangover,
You
right?
do, you have a bit of a hangover. And for me, it's just like the immediate guilt after it. Do you know what I mean? Like, even I'll have a donut or something like that, and I'm just like, fuck's sake, man. It makes you feel like shit. Do you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but I think in the beginning, as we'll talk about loads of things, but like, it's just about you do whatever makes you feel good in the early stages of not drinking. Do you know what I mean? Because I was fucking miserable about it for a while. So
Yeah, I agree, man. I think that's good advice because you do. I think like people, I used to say to people, they'd be like, oh, I've just smashed like loads of sweets and a biscuit or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't go out and drink, did you? So it ain't that bad. Like, just take the small wins, I think.
100%. I wanted to like post about that at some point. Like, it's funny now how I give myself like exactly that, like a hard time for having a bag of sweets when like I would be licking a bag of gear at like 5 a.m. Do you know what I mean? Like, and like that was like fine. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have had that fucking carrot cake.
Mate, it's like I didn't meditate yesterday morning and I was a bit grouchy and I was like, who am I? Like, what's going on here? And I was thinking like same thing as you, be like doing gear in like early hours of the morning. And today, like yesterday, I'm a little bit off because I didn't meditate. And it's like, how have I got here? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's been really like inspiring watching your journey, and it's like it's been important for me to have other people that are like my age, like being really rooted in their sobriety. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously I was like, going a bit backwards and forwards, and like wasn't that like set in it. So, yeah, it's been inspiring to see people, like you doing it and and embracing that and doing it for a long time.
No, I appreciate that, man. And yeah, like I said, likewise with you, I've always liked your content just because, don't know, you just cut through the bullshit. There's a lot of bullshit on Instagram, I find, and there's a lot of like people that were portraying this one side of sobriety, which was very, I don't know, like a pink cloud moment. And I still get those moments, and I know you probably do as well. But it's like you was talking about, like, actually, this is quite scary. This is quite a big change. And you, I guess, you grew up probably the same way I did, right? Like,
Yeah.
what would you say like your earliest memories of alcohol were, sort of growing up?
Yeah, so my earliest memory my earliest experience with alcohol, I can remember it really clearly. I was on like a family holiday in Greece. And I think I was like 11, like I want to say like 11 probably. And it was like a resort holiday. And of an evening, like the sort of town, the nearby town was like very close to the resort, like next to it, basically. And me and my brother went into the town, and Greece, at that time, at least, however many years ago, 19 years ago, we didn't have any trouble getting a few. I think we first bought like Bacardi breezers in a supermarket, and we got served. So we got those. And then I think we also got a few like Amstel from like just a little fridge place on like a little corner shop sort of thing. So had those drinks, and like I think they often say, don't they, with people that go on to develop some kind of issue with a substance, it's kind of like this moment, when you first like engage with it. It was definitely like that for me. I was like, what is this? Like it was euphoric. It was like, I don't know, it was so much fun, and it was sort of, yeah, just doing whatever I was doing, with my brother and whoever else was was with us, having a great time. And I remember when we came back from that holiday, I would then like, when I would stay, have a sleepover at a mate's house or whatever, and they hadn't tried alcohol yet, I was a terrible influence. I was like, we need to do this. Like, we need to do this. Like, and so, we would steal beers, or like from, people's people's parents, the cupboard, or like, replacing a bit of vodka with, water, all that sort of stuff. Only like a couple of beers here and there in the beginning, those early stages. But yeah, I think looking back, you could tell by how much I loved it and was seeking it out and pioneering that, if you like amongst my mates, that it probably wasn't going to go well.
Yeah. So do you think, because you said you had that feeling like what you're talking about, I described as like, I felt like I arrived. So for
Yeah.
me, it was like, yes, I'm here. And I always felt a little bit kind of discontent, maybe a bit uncomfortable in my own skin from a young age. And I
Mm.
think alcohol definitely gave me like this mad boost of confidence. And it was a feeling of like, if I have a couple of these drinks, I think I can do anything, you know?
Yeah,
Like, do
yeah.
you resonate with that?
Yeah, do you know what? Like, I don't, and I've been really thinking about this throughout the whole, like my whole journey with, you know, alcohol sobriety. Like, what is it like really that, you know, attracted me to it? And I think, I don't know. I've spoken before about like, I feel like I just had a bit of a void in me, like sometimes growing up, and like wanting there to be more to life and not feeling fulfilled, and you know, probably feeling a bit insecure in some ways, and some of the stuff you just mentioned. But I think really for me it was just like, it was latching on to that euphoria. And I was really badly behaved in school. I got expelled from a private school that I went to at the age of 12 for getting like suspended 3 times. And I that was a lot of the time that was just for like pissing around in class and constantly being like disruptive. And so I kind of, I don't know, like I was always chasing some kind of adrenaline. So at school it was pissing about in a classroom because that gave me a rush of like having attention and stuff like that. And then discovered alcohol. So I think it mostly for me was just the rush, the excitement of it, and filling maybe a bit of a like you know, vacant place from within, which kind of grew as I got older. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think I resonate as well. For me, it was like fantasy almost. So like
Mm.
I'd almost fantasize of like what a life could be like, rather than just being like, you know what, Nick, like you got a mum and dad who actually really love you. Like
Yeah.
you got a roof over your head and all that. It's always like, yeah, but I haven't got what he's got. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So for me, the same thing as well. Like school was definitely same thing. All my teachers would say, like, not a bad kid, just does not concentrate, is constantly talking. You know, he probably got a bit of potential to do something with his life, but he's kind of wasting it.
Do you feel so like, I think it sounds like we're both quite similar here in terms of what we're talking about. When I've explained my story before from that perspective, a lot of people have said it sounds quite ADHD, and like, and I could say that for, you know,
Yeah.
what you were just
Met me
saying
in
there.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Had like 10 espressos.
Right, and also various other things that we could both give, I'm sure, like as examples. But I've heard that whether or not I have ADHD, I don't know, but like there are a lot of things about my past that you could definitely, you know, put in line with that. And even as an adult, you know, I find it very difficult to focus on one thing, and I'm a bit all over the place. I'll like start one task, half finish it, and then go on to another one, like all these different things. Anyway, I've heard that if you do have ADHD or those tendencies, that is a really bad mix with alcohol. Is that something that you've ever looked into, like
Yeah,
whether or not you might be somewhere? And also, I don't want to be, you know, I know for people that have severe ADHD, it can maybe be quite almost annoying, like nowadays, with everyone kind of saying, you know, they might have it or whatever else. But I'm genuinely saying it from a place of,
no,
I identify with a lot of the traits. I've never looked into it, and I've been curious about how that might relate to alcohol.
no, I think so. Yeah, because I think so. I remember when I was really young, like primary school, I actually went to somewhere to go get sort of like checked for all this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, they was like, yeah, you're just like dyslexic and you've got a bit of an issue with like focusing, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think that was like what 20 odd years ago. I was probably like
Mm.
7 years old. I don't think ADHD was really like spoken about so much. I think you just got labeled as a bit of a naughty kid, but I was the same, and I'm like ultra obsessive with things.
Yeah.
And I think another thing that used to happen was, so when I would do gear as well, it would kind of like, it would actually have the opposite effect of what it had on most people. So like,
Really?
so it would kind of chill me out to a degree. Like obviously not initially, but like it would be that numbing feeling of like I could do more and more and more, because it was like leveling out the dopamine in my brain. So
Wow.
that's what I feel. That's sort of what I think. I think it was making my brain just calm for a minute, because it was like
Mm.
it was almost that dopamine that I had too much of. It was like
Yeah.
it were going to go right into overdrive, and it's going to actually level you out. So yeah,
Did you find it hard to sleep after doing gear though?
yeah,
Because like that's like obviously one of the horrific things about doing it is, you know, laying in bed at 5 a.m. and hating yourself.
I just wouldn't stop, mate.
Really?
That was
You
the
can avoid
answer.
that.
Yeah, if you never
Yeah.
stop, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Like, but that's terrible advice, by the way.
No,
Don't
no,
take
yeah,
that advice.
no, no.
No, yeah, I think it is. There's definitely a link into it. There has to be, because everybody who I hear talking about sort of sobriety or
Mm, mm,
substance issues always has that same sort of like mad personality. And I think what you
yeah,
realize as well is when people then get sober, become themselves, they can actually be that mad, outgoing person without drugs and alcohol.
yeah.
But I was using it as a way, I guess, to like amplify that at the same time. But yeah, what about you? What do you think?
I think that, in terms of becoming that like loud, outgoing, like, freeing up your personality in ways that alcohol like allowed you to, I don't think I'm fully there yet, like obviously I did that 1 year sober and I progressed a lot during that time, became more confident or whatever, but still dealt a lot with social anxiety, particularly around like, parties, social occasions, and all this sort of stuff. And I think that this is often one of the problems for people like me who struggle with that social anxiety side of thing and overthink things a lot. And I don't know, it can be quite complex mentally, if you like, is for some people giving up drinking, they're quite, you know, I'm thinking of my girlfriend as an example. Like she's like great in she's naturally really happy, outgoing, bright. Like she never needed to have a drink in social situations because she just enjoyed them anyway. She could go and have a night out without drinking, all the rest of it. I wasn't like that, like alcohol was like a must for me in terms of a lot of these situations. And so the idea that you're going to strip it away and instantly be like, euphoric, cloud nine. I think you referred to it as like a pink cloud moment or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Is it?
correct. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the issue often with sobriety content online is you can feel that when you give up, if everything is not fantastic straight away, then you're like, why am I on getting the shit end of the sobriety stick, so to speak? Do you know what I mean? Why am I not experiencing all these like amazing things that people talk about? And I think it's really important that we do talk about all of the amazing things and becoming a better person. And, I've spoken a lot about the benefits on my Instagram page, but I think it's also really important that we're real about, how long some of these things can take to come through, how how difficult some of the changes can be. Like, I spoke about if it felt like a part of me died when I gave up drinking this time recently, like a
Yeah.
couple of months ago, whatever it was, like, I would be always one of the loudest people in the room, like, joker and all the rest of it. And it wasn't always completely catastrophic, terrible. Like, there were some nights where I'd be like, oh, that was good. I didn't go completely mad or whatever, but more often than not, I would. So I think when you're in that situation, there's always going to be an element of you that looks back through rose tinted glasses and thinks, oh, was I better in certain situations when I was drinking? However, as I'm sure we'll get to, you know, it's often an illusion with alcohol. And I was saying to you before we started, it was really never worth it, actually, like in terms of the hangovers, the consequences, like even if it was good one time out of 10 or whatever. So very long way of answering your question. Like I definitely do think you can become obviously that confident, happy, productive, best version of yourself without alcohol. And I think everyone will, of course, but it takes time to like unlock some of the maybe more social side of that.
I agree, man. I mean, I hit 1,000 days the other day, coming up to like 3 years. And I think I'd say the first 9 months for me personally was that like figuring out who the hell am I? Because
Yeah.
like it was so rooted into my identity that I just thought like, if I don't drink, who do I hang around with? What do I do on the weekends? How do I go to a football game? How do I go to a party? How do I go on a date with my missus? How do I actually have a conversation with my missus fucking dad who loves a beer? Like, how do I socialize with my dad? When you start asking yourselves all these questions, it's definitely something that's worth talking about. So I was going to ask you in regards to like challenges in sobriety,
Hmm.
especially in early sobriety. What would you say were some of the biggest challenges you faced? And then if you haven't overcome them, maybe you haven't yet, but if you have, how have you?
Yeah, I think the biggest one would be what I was kind of like alluding to there before in terms of socializing. Like I don't think I've mastered yet the sober party, the sober these big like social events. Like I think Because when you're drinking, they are literally the biggest things in the calendar. You know, like I would know when there was like a wedding coming up, like weeks in advance, and I'd be like, "Oh, we're going to be getting on it from, you know, midday. It's going to
Yeah.
be accepted. You know, it's going to be celebrated, all the rest of it." So when you strip that away, and you know you're going to be in a room full of, you know, a lot of people you don't know, and I don't know, people that used to see you in a context of drinking and all the rest of it, that can be like, it can be like you were saying, like, how do I do all of these situations without alcohol? So it can be really, really difficult to get your head around that. But I think for me, it's like, the most helpful thing that I'm finding in my sobriety is, and it also in answer to the question that you just asked me, like what's the most like difficult thing, I also find it really difficult when I'm like walking past a pub or like walking past groups of lads on holiday and they're all like smashing beers around a table. I remember in Greece walking past like a table of guys doing exactly that, and it was like midday again, and I was like in the sun, I was with my girlfriend and we were going for a coffee, and I was like, oh, I'd love to be on that table. Do you know what I mean? Like they're all shouting and you know, smoking loads of fags, and I was like, oh mate, I would love that right now. But the most like, so that's a challenge. Like you're gonna have that, like the envy. And I think it's okay to like embrace that. Again, the idea that you're just gonna like give up one day to the next and be like, oh, that's alcohol's awful. Like I don't miss
Yeah.
that at all.
Yeah.
It's just not gonna happen. At least not for me anyway. And so the most helpful thing for me that really is working is like, on all of those situations, on the party that you're like socially anxious about before, on the table of guys that you walk past and are drinking and seemingly having a great time, imagine you've got a remote and you can press fast forward on that situation. Being yourself, I'm not saying the people involved in that because everyone's different, although probably quite similar. What happens if you fast forward that to from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. and then from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. and then from 5 a.m. till like midday the next day? All of those next increments of time are going to be a version of you that you don't want to be, and a version of you that you're not going to be like envious of at all, and a situation you're not going to want to be in. And it's going to be such a terrible thought that you'll look at that you know, seemingly really happy moment and you'll go, nah, fuck that. You know, that's been the biggest change for me that has helped with everything, because it basically just makes you realize that if you're like me and you have a tendency to take it too far, it's never worth it. It might be worth it for me one out of, you know, however many, like many times, which by definition then means it's not worth it. So by pressing that fast forward, you start to realize that drinking doesn't make sense anymore. And from there, everything's got easier for me, I think.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's such good advice, I think, because it is that romanticizing piece as well. Because I always say to people, they're like, oh, like the pub garden looks so enticing and amazing. I'm like, go for a Coke then. And I don't want to. I'm like, well, you don't want to go to the pub garden then, do you?
Yeah,
You want to go get fucking wasted.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and that's the reality of it, is like, if you wanted to go to the pub and enjoy the environment, you would. But one thing I've learned over the years is like, your social settings and circles can change as well. So like
yeah,
I tend to just, you know, if I'm honest, unless it's something I have to go to, I probably just won't go to it because it doesn't really align to my values anymore. So I'd rather go for a hike or meet my friends for a coffee or kind of like go for a run, go to a run club, even go wild swimming, something that's like actually way more exciting. And you can get those same sort of hits of dopamine and those rushes from different things. And I think it's like I tried to live my old life for way too
yeah,
long rather than stepping into like this new version of myself. But it took me time to figure that out. And if I hadn't have gone on that sort of process, I wouldn't appreciate my life now. Like, if that makes sense. I kind of needed to have like 9 months of what is going on, who am I,
yeah,
and it felt like everything was falling apart. But like the reality was, it was really kind of like my life was slowly falling into place, if you know what I mean. It was like everything that I needed was just around the corner, and it was so easy at times to be like, I should just fuck this off.
yeah,
But then when I held on, it was like, oh shit, things are getting slightly better. So I was going to ask as well, like a little bit about your sort of first time that you gave up and going back into school. You said, you know, you was a little bit of a naughty kid, and
yeah.
just taking us through a little bit of your, I guess, your drinking career from school, kind of up to the point where you decided the first time around, like, you know, I'm going to have a break, and like, what were some of the key drivers for you in that decision?
So yeah, I mean, I probably tried it at like 11, 12, as I said, and then like was experimenting, you could say, like in that period. And then I think when I got to like maybe the age of 14, like after changing school and having a new group of mates, it then started to become like a, a most weekend sort of thing. And it was never like have a few drinks. Like our culture, obviously in the UK, particularly when you're like young growing up, it might be different now, but it wasn't then. Was like, let's just get as fucked as we can. Let's get a bottle of Glen's vodka, and do you know what I mean? And just like go mad with it. So, but even from those like early days, I would very often be the one that got like the most drunk and made like a bit of a, twat of himself and all the rest of it. So like, again, like the kind of the warning signs were on the wall like really, really early. And then also I think from the age of like 15, 16, I started like experimenting with drugs,
Yeah.
like, which sometimes it depends what group of friends you're in, whether that sounds early or not, but like around my group of mates, it was just in the area I was, socializing in and all the rest of it, it was just super normal, like ecstasy, coke, like weed, obviously, all that sort of stuff. And so started to lose myself a bit more in that world, and again, it was only ever a weekend thing through those years. But you know, I mean, even at the age of like 16, 17, I was getting on a bender from a Saturday and then still feeling rough on like a Tuesday, and I remember my dad actually saying to me once when I was like proper moody on a Tuesday morning or something, he was like, I know you're doing more than just drinking, because it's not, I can see you're not right like a few days like after, and that's not normal. And I remember thinking, fucking hell, like, how's he clocked this,
He gave
um
birth to you, mate. So maybe he's got his own experience.
true,
You forget, right?
true,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, so but I wasn't, when you're that age, you don't have any like regard or care for like how that might be affecting you, the patterns of behavior you're developing or whatever. And the way I look at it now is like, from a really young age, I was completely messing up my like dopamine. And I don't know the science behind it, so maybe what I'm about to say doesn't make sense, but it makes sense in terms of how I feel looking at my journey. Like, messing with my like dopamine regulation in my brain and my idea of what fun meant in life. And from that moment, if you're doing drugs and drinking a lot like that from a young age, your definition of fun and what fun needs to be and feeling good in life is then always going to be this like crazy euphoria, which you're never going to match unless you do that thing. And so I think that paved the way for a lot of problems. And then yeah, then I went to uni, and obviously, was getting blackout drunk 3 times a week. And that's where it like really started to go off the rails. I smoked a lot of weed between the ages of 16 to 18. I think largely because, and I actually didn't drink that much during that period. I think because I was already getting a bit like sick of the consequences of alcohol, and so I smoked quite a lot of weed. But I think that started to frag with my brain a little bit in terms of making me feel more anxious, making me feel more paranoid, all this sort of stuff. And I remember when I was at uni, I was like, starting to get scared of my own shadow, like walking down the street and stuff. Like, I'd be walking home from a lecture and I'd see a shadow behind me and I'd jump, and then I'd be like, fucking hell, that's me, like,
Yeah.
and then also like I'd be in Tesco and someone would come around the corner and I would like jump out of my shoes, like, and at that point I was like, okay, I'm not smoking weed anymore. Like, this is doing something, to my mind, which I don't like. And so I gave that up, lent more into drinking, and yeah, ended up really anxious, really depressed at uni, and suicidal and all the rest of it, which I can talk about in a more in this way now. But it was a really shit time, like back then. And I think that probably from the age of like 22, so left uni, moved to Spain for a couple of years, and ended up getting myself in, to loads of plenty of situations,
Yeah.
there, which were alcohol fueled. And probably from that sort of time, so, 8, 9 years ago now, I knew this substance brings me issues, like, more often than not, when I start, I can't stop. And more often than not, that leads to me being a version of myself that I'm not happy with, I don't align with, and all the rest of it. But 8, 9 years ago, at the age of 22, the sober scene and social media and all the rest of it, like all of that great stuff we have now around sobriety, wasn't there when, 8, 9 years ago or whatever. And so it wasn't even an option, the thought of giving up. You know what I mean? It was just like, control it better, you know,
Yeah,
like I'll
definitely.
just control it better. You know, that'll be fine. And, you know, I can pretty much just glaze through the next like 8 years with like, that's just basically how it stayed, you know, being a really bad binge drinker, mostly just weekends. Um, but then when I moved to London, drugs started to become more of a common theme. And actually, one of the reasons why I leaned into like taking gear was because, and it sounds terrible, but it's true, like it kept me sober.
Yeah, I know the
Do
feeling.
you know what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean? I was like,
100%.
if I drink, if I go out on this session and I drink, you know, 8, 10 pints and I don't do it, I'm gonna end up messy as anything. Whereas if I do that, I might drink a bit less, I'll stay with it, I won't make a dick of myself, like all the rest of it. And so it then became, you know, when I'd go out on a weekend, that would almost, you know, always involve like doing coke as well, which then messes with your, you know, your mind even more, and you start to, yeah. So it wasn't, you know, and then also had a very, yeah, very bad period in London in terms of feeling suicidal again, and you know, just the way I describe it is like crossing days out in the calendar during the week to just go and like explode like a supernova Friday through Sunday. And then Monday would come around, and Monday to Wednesday, I'd just feel like my whole world was going to end. And yeah, and then after like one situation too many, I was due in at work at 8 a.m. At a PR agency that I that I worked for, and it was a Wednesday night. It was a Wednesday night, and a pub near me was doing half price pints, between like 5 and 7, I think,
Right,
half
yeah.
price pints. So they were like, I don't know, like £3 a pint or something, and like smashed loads of those, whatever. Anyway, couldn't remember getting home, couldn't remember, you know, loads of that evening, and woke up at like 10 when I had to be in work at 8, and I was just like, this is, you know, this, like, I'm really done with this now. Because even without those like big bad wake ups, of which I had plenty, you still just, there's the voice in the back of your head when you wake up with a bad hangover, and you're just like, oh fuck, that just wasn't worth it. Do you know what I mean? Like it just, and that builds up over time, and it's just like a little snowball that gathers momentum and gets bigger and bigger until one day one big thing happens and you're like, okay, fuck this, I am done, you know. And so from that moment, I was like, I'm done. But I decided that I would do, you know, the idea was to do a year off drinking, because that would fix everything, and then I could go back and do it. And it's crazy, isn't it? Like after all the stuff that I just described, I still wanted to find a way back to it, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So that's kind of how I got to the first point of giving up, you know.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's yeah, it's mad because it's just like it's just total insanity, isn't it? Like of the and I think everyone's brain does it, and I think it's also a societal thing because it's like I think you think that you can have that break, and like I still think about this sometimes, you know, nowadays because people say like, "Do you reckon you could have a couple?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I probably could, right?" I don't know how long that would last for though, because I feel like I would kind of slip back into old habits. But it's interesting to sort of I never really knew that your intention was just to do
Mm.
do that year, but I mean, what's happened in that year is crazy, man. Like you're because I only know you as the content creator,
Yeah.
saying back on track, you know, and I think like didn't know any of that other side of your story. And also thank you for being like so open and honest, man. It was really nice to hear because I just feel like you just talking about me, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's why what you do hits home for so many people
Mm.
because it's that like kind of monotonous existence of like the weekend warrior. And just kind of like get into I remember like you said that Wednesday feeling, the Monday to Wednesday is just like brutal, isn't it, man? Like Groundhog Day.
Mate, the some of the Mondays that I had in my drinking career were so horrendous. You know what I mean? Like where you're literally like waking up and you feel like you're on a boat, your head's spinning, you feel so depressed, you're so anxious about what happened at the weekend, you're behind on work, you're late, you're going in and you feel like you're going to pass out. Do you know what I mean? And like you've got to be on the ball or whatever. It's just it's crazy what we, you know, put ourselves through. You back in, I'm sure it was the same for
Yeah,
you, but like it's wild, like that you just accept that as a tax for drinking, you know what I mean? Like even just hangovers, like now that I have a, you know, I've been away from it for a while, the thought of just having a bad hangover is just like completely
It's debilitating, isn't it? Like,
mate, it's just like it's crazy that I would accept that as such a regular occurrence. Like, I just feel fucking really sick as a dog today, and that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, it's
I was going to ask then about like sort of talking us through that first year, that
yeah,
period, because like I said, what you've achieved in that year is crazy. And was that always the intention, or was it just a case of like, I'm gonna stop for a year?
yeah.
But did you think all of the other stuff that's happened, over the past year in your life would have happened? And was that planned, or was it just like a knock-on effect, I guess, of like making one positive decision has led to something?
Yeah, it's all related because I knew that if I didn't make some kind of like public commitment to giving up drinking, like I might flake on that decision like down the line. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas I was like, if I post this video on Instagram now saying I'm giving up drinking and all that, and it's been really bad for me, I can't then be in the pub at the weekend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
That would be, that'd be mad. So I was like, you know what? I think I can keep myself accountable here. And also back in the day, like 5 years ago, whatever, around COVID times, whenever it was, I started a podcast called the Back on Track
Oh,
podcast.
nice.
And it was interviewing people that had overcome adversity in different forms, whether it was drinking, criminality, disabilities, whatever it might be, right? And so I'd done like long form content, and I struggled to scale that. I struggled to grow it, and I always felt that I was starting to, because before I started this social media journey, I didn't really use social media myself. And when I would look at like reels and stuff like that, I was like, oh, I think I can make like a 1 minute video about kind of my journey. I think I can do that. And I think people would be more engaged in that. And I was like, and I really hated my job as well, and like the 9 to 5 and all the rest of it. And I was like, okay, there might be a way here that I can keep myself honest. I can inspire other people around a topic which I think we're not talking about enough, which is drinking, particularly drinking. Mental health is now pretty widely like spoken about, but drinking and in that grey area of drinking specifically. Um, and if it goes well, it might result in me being able to quit my job and live a life more on my terms, which I think is really important for happiness. And so I thought, like, fuck it, that's got to
Yeah.
be like, those three things have to be worth jumping off the precipice, or whatever, in terms of giving it a go. So I just started posting. And so I started posting in January last year, I think it was. And in the beginning, 5, 10 likes on like videos and stuff, like my mates. And I was running around like parks in Peckham and like shouting into the camera, like like motivational stuff, like fucking hell. If I go back now, like you can scroll back to
Yeah,
through
yeah.
people's feeds, if I like watching some of my like first videos is just funny. But it's it shows how far you can go. And yeah, and I was so, you have to be really motivated when you do these sorts of things, because otherwise when you're getting 5 to 10 likes and people that know you are seeing it and probably like taking a piss and all the rest of it, then you're going to give up. But again, I was just so motivated that this was the right thing to do across so many different things that I stuck with it. And then the social media, yeah, it started like popping off in like February. So a month after doing that, it started like reaching a lot of people. And I think that what that says, I mean, even the video that I made the other day about like deciding to quit drinking for good, it got like 1 million views, right? And I think that makes me feel good from a perspective, not a vanity
Yeah,
perspective,
yeah.
but from a perspective of, I am not alone in this whole struggling with drinking thing at all. It says something that the videos that I make around that topic gain such a following so quickly and engage so many people. That's because a lot of people out there are feeling the same, even if they won't say it openly, And so once I kind of realized that as well, I thought, I've kind of got a job to do here, like a responsibility in some way, maybe, to try and, because as you said, like my life has changed like drastically since deciding to give up drinking. I have become a content creator, as wanky as that sounds. I started my own business. I've like got fit, and I'm just happier. Like, all I could list all of these things. And also, like, most importantly, like I'm not like suicidal and like hating my life and like hurting people around me and all that sort of stuff. So if I can inspire anyone else to make that choice, and or at least like think about that in some way, then that's like an incredible thing. And I think that's what also, maybe selfishly, like it keeps me grounded and passionate about this journey, the helping other people side of it, if you know what I mean. So so yeah, I mean, did I ever think like all of this other stuff was going to follow? Not to this extent. Not
Yeah,
to this extent. Like, you know, been really fortunate to work with some cool brands and, you know, earn a living from it now, and, you know, be able to start looking at making decisions in life like on my own terms, and, you know, all of that stuff was a dream. And it just goes to show what can happen when you decide to stop self-sabotaging and getting in your own way. It's amazing what, you know, what can happen.
yeah. I think it's really inspiring, mate. Like honestly, you should be so proud of yourself. I know you probably get told that a lot, but I think, like I said, like you don't really even realize the ripple effect that stuff that you're doing has on people. I mean, like not just that person directly, like the impact that you're having. So say a million people saw that video, right? And half of them decided to make a positive change.
Mm.
That's affected all of those people's families, all of their friends. Like it's crazy, mate, what you can do. And I think you're such a good advocate for like what you can do for social media in a positive way.
Mm.
Because I think social media can get a bad name, right? You know, people say, oh, it's a bad thing, people get addicted to it, all the rest of it. But if you use it positively, like, you know, it can really like help people. And I think like your content over the last couple of years or year, however long you've been doing it, it's definitely helped me. And I think it's just like I said, it's that relatability piece. And I
Yeah.
think that's why it works. And you touched on it there, man. There's so many people that sit in this weird sort of grey area drinking phase. I was pretty lucky that mine wasn't mine wasn't very grey. It was pretty black and white. And it was like, you need to stop or you're probably gonna fucking die,
Wow.
which is fine. Because then it's given me the life that I
Mm.
have now. And I'm so great. I'm actually really grateful that I got to that point because I probably would never have made the change. But there is loads of people that sit in that sort of middle area, like the weekend, and just like not knowing. And they're probably on the fence. And I think seeing you live the life that you do, but also honestly, you know,
Yeah.
you still talk about those struggles. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to pat you on the back, mate, and say well done.
No, thanks, man. That means a lot. Genuinely, it does mean a lot. And, you know, it's the same to you for what you're doing with this podcast and the community that you've created. And, you know, that's why I wanted to come on here and, you know, and be a part of that in some way. But talking about what you said there about, you know, I'm really passionate about that gray area of drinking, if you know what I mean, because I think that our definition as a society of what a problem is with alcohol is really, really problematic, and it keeps people stuck in a cycle which is ruining their lives and the lives of people around them. And that is, you are only an alcoholic. You should only stop drinking if you are reaching for a bottle of Bell's at
Yeah,
8 o'clock in
yeah,
the morning and smashing that down, and your house is burning down and you've just been fired and all the rest of it. And unless that's happening, probably like you're all right and you can carry on. And it's just like, I think there are actually two ways to look at the like alcohol, having an alcohol problem. And one of them is not being able to control when you drink, i.e., like drinking every day because taking a day off or whatever, or a week off or however long is not feasible. And the other is not being able to stop once you start drinking, right?
yeah,
And I was in the second category. And I thought that because I could do dry Jan, because I could do 3 months off, you know, well, I could do a year off.
yeah,
But that doesn't mean that I didn't have a problem with it. Because when I would start drinking, more often than not, it would end up in a way that was that was negative for me or people around me, right? And so, and sure, sometimes it would be okay, like you were saying a minute ago, like could I go and, you know, to a pub out there now, have 3 pints, police myself, and go home? Yeah, I could. But like you said, but over time, that would start to not be the case. I'd start to be a bit less strict with myself. 3 would turn into 5, 5 would turn into drugs and whatever. And that's just the way it goes, right? And so I think that really, you know, looking at whether someone should, you know, have a look at their relationship with alcohol is not, is my life going to crumble and fall into pieces? It's, is it causing me an issue in some way? Do I find it to difficult to stop drinking when I stop? And if any of these things are, you know, ring true with people, then, you know, I just want them to know that there is another way of living, and that giving up drinking doesn't mean you're banished to some, you know, bad corner of society where you're going to be on like sober island by yourself forever. Like, and actually it can be the best thing you ever do. And so, mate, how many millions of people are in that like weekend
Oh, mate.
offending gray area of drinking? Like, and that's not to say that I don't want to, inspire, you know, other people along the scale. Obviously, I care about the whole spectrum of it, but I just think that that's an area where you can help such a critical mass of people. And I realize I've been going on a lot about this, but one of my favorite quotes actually is from Steve-O, and I'm sure you
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
know it. And the worst thing would be to kind of have like alcoholism, to
yeah, literally.
kind of be an alcoholic, because he's like, I know so many of my mates that are just like wasting it. They can kind of function, they can get through their life. It's not so bad that they have to stop, but it is causing them problems. And like that, they never make a change. And that just really rang true for me. That's how it was for me. And I just want people to know that, it doesn't have to be terrible to make a change.
Yeah, I mean, there's a stat. So I think it's actually 6% of the population is kind of like in that alcohol dependence stage,
Yeah.
and then you've got the rest of the world which sit in this sort of like grey area drinking. And it's like you said, it's showing them that there's another option and having like a preventative measure for those people to be like, all right, let's just educate you a little bit on like it's okay to feel how you're feeling, because to be honest, the people that are at sort of that stage where it's alcohol dependence, they can go into treatment, they can go and
Yeah.
do what they need to do. But it's the people that sit like, and it's how close you are in that percentage, because you kind of, for me, I'd say I would skirt into that dependence occasionally. And you said it, there's a saying of like staying stop. So you can stop, but you can't stay stop once you start.
Yeah.
And another saying that I love is like, it's an analogy around a peanut allergy. So like if you had a peanut allergy and I offered you a pecan nut, you'd say no. And they'd be like, well, why don't you try a chestnut instead? Or why don't you try a different nut, right? You would never take the nut. But for me, it's like alcohol. I use the analogy of like I've got an allergy to it. So why would I think that not drinking it from a certain period of time is going to get rid of that allergy? When I
Yeah.
drink it again, it's going to be the same. And whether it's beers, wine, gin and tonic, it doesn't matter. I think the outcome for me was always the same, and I really resonate with what you're saying. And I think that it was that 2 beer stage, and like I was negotiating with a totally different person, and my partner would always say to me as well, like she could see the change in my eyes.
Me too.
Yeah, she'd be like, "Fuck, we've lost Nick. Like he's gone, and we ain't getting him back." And she sometimes would be like, "Please don't go out, just come home." And I'd be like, yeah,
Can't do it.
yeah, I can't. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Like, I'm gonna go out. And she's like, please, like, just stay at home. I'll be like, yeah, see you later. And it's just like so unreasonable, isn't it?
It is, but mate, that it's there are so many parallels between our story. It's like a shine that just like goes across your eyes,
Yeah,
a slight glint, and people used to say it to me as well. And like, you can, like you say, you can have someone that you love in front of you, and let's go and let's watch a film, whatever, like a perfectly like lovely evening, right? But the thought of going out and doing drugs and drinking is just far too strong. And it's the same for me, and that's why I know now that like, just not having the first drink just means that I am always in control of that decision. And also another thing that I wanted to talk about like is the fact that I used to make myself feel like shit for not being able to control my drinking once I started, like as if that was some, lack of willpower that I had, or, immaturity in some way, right? Because we have in society this idea that if you can hold your drink, that's like,
you're a
something
geezer.
to be proud of, you know what I mean? Like, and I see that really differently now. I've read a few books in the early stages of this second round of not drinking, and one of them is Alcohol Explained, and the other one is This Naked Mind. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
read
yeah,
like either of them, but basically they allowed me to have a much better knowledge of what alcohol is. Like, it is just a really addictive drug, and the fact that it makes you want to have more of it is exactly what it is designed to do. And in different people, the severity of that desire to drink more once you start, will take place in different ways. And for me, it's quite a severe, reaction. Like, once I start drinking, I really want to drink more. That's not anything that's wrong with me. That's what that substance is designed to do. Other people might have that less for varying different reasons, whether it's like whether it's their mental health, or whether it's, I don't know, like their life situation or whatever. But the reality is, like, with enough exposure to alcohol and the wrong life scenarios to happen, a lot of people, you know, can find themselves in a situation where they struggle to control their drinking. It's just what alcohol is designed to do. And so if anybody is listening to this and they've had a big weekend and they feel like they've made it like a fool of themselves on a night out or whatever, and then, oh, why can't I control this? That's nothing that's wrong with you. That is exactly what the drug is meant to do. And you might not have a choice after you start drinking, but you do have a choice to not drink. And that's where the responsibility for me personally comes in. You know, I said in a reel the other day, like, I went to Whitstable, like a seaside town in Kent near my parents, and I saw people drinking, and I was like, oh, that looks fun. But I was like, but I didn't drink. And the great thing about not drinking was I can guarantee that I'm like not going to be a dickhead. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's great. And that's great. You know, like, if I have a few drinks, then you know, like, I'm not in control. But if I choose not to drink at all, I am.
No, I agree, man. I think it's like the phenomenon of craving. So, you know, like for me, that first drink sets something off within my body that's like just unreasonable, you know. And there's no fighting it. And you said it, the easiest drink and the only drink I have to say no to is the first one.
Yeah.
I don't have to, and I don't ever have to say no to the second one because I won't. So if I just say no to the first drink, that's simple. Like, and when you start to like really simplify these things in your head and you get these little sayings, because I remember like early days, people saying like one day at a time, say no to the first drink, and I'm like, shut up, bruv. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And like as time goes on, you're like, oh shit, like it all makes sense. And you talking about reading the 2 books you're reading, like it's rewiring your brain in a positive way. And it's like you don't realize it, but the stuff you're reading now, there'll be parts of that book which you've skimmed over, right? And like in a year or two's time, you'll be in a situation and you won't realize that you've read a piece of that book that relates perfectly to this situation. You'll be like, oh, cool, yeah, and it triggers these thoughts. And I think that's a really good advice that you said, is start to understand a little bit more about maybe the science, especially if you're not somebody who's like, you know, into the spiritual side of things. It can be like, I need some hard facts, and so there's some great books out there that will give you them.
Bro, I think, like, I would urge anybody listening to this to read those 2 books, 3 books that I would say, like, anybody, if you relate to the story that I've shared or your story, I would read Sober on a Drunk Planet by Sean Alexander, This Naked Mind, I think it's by
Alan Carr.
I think This Naked Mind is
Janie Grace or something.
just something like that. Yeah. So yeah, Sober on a Drunk Planet, This Naked Mind, and Alcohol Explained. I read those 3, and if you read those 3 cover to cover, you will certainly have a different you know, idea of what alcohol is and how whether you want it in your life at all. Almost certainly not. But one other thing that I love that I wanted to get in as well for anybody that's in that kind of gray area of drinking is in Sober on a Drunk Planet, which is a great book. The guy says, Sean Alexander says, one of the things that was so tiring about drinking was the mental karate around it. And I love that expression because it's like, and I found it when I tried to reintroduce alcohol into my life, like, you know, 6 months ago or whatever. It was like, okay, shall I drink tonight? But I've got this thing tomorrow, but I can have 4. I can have 4. Shit, but then I can't drive home. You know, okay, all of this sort of stuff is fucking like exhausting. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just. And that's another reason why the moderation thing can't work for me, because I just spend far too much time thinking about when I should drink, how much I should drink, whether it was worth it, if I felt shit the next, all this sort of stuff. And it's just like, you don't realize how much time you're spending thinking about it, and you get rid of that. And then you can just focus on, you know, sailing your life in a direction that you want to go. So yeah, just another cool expression.
I think that's great, because there's a couple of people that I've speak to and they sort of are saying the same thing that you're talking about when it comes to like that thought process. And I'm like, you do realize if you don't have a problematic relationship with alcohol, you don't think like that. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you just spoke to me for 10 minutes about why you don't think you have a problem with drinking.
Yeah.
You probably got a problem with drinking, right? You know? It's like if you're sitting there convincing yourself you don't, because you don't think about that with anything else in your life.
Yeah.
You don't think like, I'm going to the gym too much, or like, you know, you don't think about those things in that depth. And it's like, if you're thinking about it like that, and that's a really great point with the mental karate.
It's just a like you know, one of the many ways in which you can think clearly, be more relaxed, have less stress in your life through just deciding, you know what, like I'm not going to drink. And so but yeah, definitely, man, reading books in the beginning, like I just really recommend that. Like I don't even really read much like outside of that, which is bad, but like around the alcohol topic, that's one thing where I was just like cover to cover,
Yeah, definitely. I think just it's also another thing to do, isn't it? Like,
Mm.
you know, in that early stage of like, because you can find yourself. I found myself doing like really unproductive sort of self-sabotaging things early on that wasn't alcohol related. But like reading a book is beneficial. You're not on your phone. You know, you're actually taking some things in, and you're being present, aren't you? Like you have to look at what you're doing. You can't really do anything else. And I think like
100%.
one of the biggest gifts for me sobriety's brought me is just like presence of just like I'm in the moment. Like this conversation,
Mm.
I've been so in this conversation, I haven't even thought about like where we are. You just get stuck into it, and you think it's so nice to sit down and chat to someone. Whereas before I would have been thinking about like what's going on out there, who's that, is there a coffee shop over there,
Yeah,
like what can I
yeah.
do? And I think it gives you presence, doesn't it?
It's such an important thing in life, man, because in social situations when I was drinking, I'd be sat around, in a restaurant with my family, and I rather than when I would first sit down, rather than like being bothered about, haven't seen this person for like ages or whatever, I'd be at the corner, where's the waiter? Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like,
100%.
where's that pint coming from? Like, and then when I'd get like near the end, I'd be like, right, and you care less, or I cared less about the conversation often, and more so about where my next drink was coming from. And like you said, like it's a beautiful thing in life to turn up to family occasions, to turn up to occasions with friends, and sit opposite your mate and look him in the eye and know you're actually there to care about what he's talking about and your relationship as like two human beings, and not this haze that comes between you and that you think you're bonding through, but really it's not that. So yeah, the presence thing is a beautiful thing, man.
Cool. Well, we've literally got a couple of minutes left. This has flown by, but there's two questions which I ask everybody at the end of every podcast. And the first question is, what would you say is the biggest benefit that sobriety has brought you?
Wow, yeah, well, there are so many, but I could go down the route of the whole productivity, life change for the better, all these sorts of things. But really, the best thing for me is now for my friends, my family, my girlfriend, and just like all the people around me, I can work on just becoming and being the nicest like person I can be, and most caring person for them to be around, rather than someone that I feel ashamed of being because I went out and got smashed and did XYZ or whatever and let them down in a certain way. Like it's such a freeing thing, like forgetting all of the other things, forgetting the career, fitness, all that sort of stuff. It's just like I can start to maybe like who I am as a person, and the people that love me hopefully do as well. And that's just priceless.
That's beautiful, man. Honestly, it is. It's like you're no longer living in self. You're living out of self. You've lost. It's like an ego death, isn't it? You've lost.
Yeah.
You've lost your ego.
Yeah.
And the final question is: what is the one piece of advice you wish you received at the beginning of your sobriety journey, which you would give to somebody else at the beginning of theirs?
Wow, these are good questions. I think one of the most important things that I really wanted to share with people is, if you are giving up drinking or getting sober from whatever it might be, and you don't have a passion to replace the time that you spent doing that thing, something that's going to give you a reason to not drink, a goal to chase, something to get obsessed with, because often people that have these interactions, these relationships with substances have these kind of, we need these things to get stuck into, and I'm no different. And so if you don't have a positive passion, for me, that's content, that's fitness, that's running, that's all these things, that's whatever. If you don't have that, you're going to feel a bit empty in your early stages of sobriety, and you'll be like, oh, this is shit. I'll go to the pub, it's the weekend, whatever. You have to create a big why, something that you're passionate about. So that for me is without a doubt, like, find what it is for you, chase it like mad, and use those great, personality traits that were terrible interacting with alcohol, use them in a powerful, good way to chase something positive.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's perfect. Well, thank you, mate. Thanks for sharing, and like, yeah, so many similarities. And I think the episode's going to help loads of people. So thanks again, mate.
Legend, man. No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And yeah, thanks for doing everything that you're doing as well, because it's important. We need more people doing it. And yeah, thanks, man.